road to recovery for Connie the turtle, who's finally made it out of rehab after a couple of years. Check us out, Sky Channel 83.
RNZ News at 5. Ahi Marie, I'm Evie Ashton. The Secondary Teachers Union says violence in schools is rising and urgent change is needed to make them safer. The warning follows an attack at Tauranga College north of Wellington yesterday, which has left one person in intensive care with serious injuries. A 15-year-old has been charged with wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. PPTA President Melanie Webber says the attack isn't isolated and an increasing number of staff and students aren't feeling safe. She says schools need more pastoral care and desperately need the resources to build up support, such as more experienced counsellors. Melanie Webber says it's concerning that some students are willing to inflict serious harm on another. Meanwhile, Aotearoa College in Auckland is holding a meeting tonight to hear parents and caregivers' concerns following two recent fights among students on school grounds that were posted online. Principal Greg Pearce says the students involved have been suspended after one was concussed. He says the meeting will give parents an opportunity to be heard and hopes they'll be reassured.
The culture is not broken or dismantled due to two uncommon incidents within a short time period. Reassure parents that we have robust systems in place for duty outbreaks, etc., and how we deal with incidents when they happen.
The police say they've referred a 14-year-old to youth aid following an assault last week. They're still making inquiries into another incident at the beginning of this month. Police investigating two gang-related shootings in Hawke's Bay are disturbed at the level of apathy to the crimes. In one of the shootings, a child's bedroom window was destroyed by a shotgun blast last Wednesday. The child wasn't in the room at the time. Detective Senior Sergeant Mark Morehouse says police are concerned that people heard the gunshots and didn't report them.
We're just concerned that some apathy or some acceptance of this sort of thing is starting to creep into the mindsets of our communities, and we really want to encourage people to ring us on the 111 line when something like this happens so that we can attend.
In the other incident, a man suffered leg injuries during a drive-by shooting on May 5th. A senior nurse at Hutt Hospital says staff were shocked to learn the main block is quake-prone. The seismic rating of the Tauranga building, which houses maternity, children's, general surgery, orthopaedic wards and burns, is just 15% of the new building standard. A duty nurse manager, Nathan Clark, says the DHB has assured staff it will work closely with them, but some disruption is unavoidable.
We lose this place and you've got to start thinking of the additional ambulance turnaround. Think of people up on the Kapiti coast. They've got a 45-minute ambulance ride in and out whenever they need anything. It would be doing the same from Upper Hutt.
Nathan Clark says he believes the DHB will work to ensure Hutt Valley retains services long term, and it may even end up with a better hospital. COVID-19 deaths in New Zealand have now hit four figures. The Ministry of Health added 32 deaths today, taking the total toll to 1,017. Health correspondent Rowan Quinn reports.
Anyone who dies having recently had COVID is counted in the figures. But COVID's been the main cause or a contributing cause in most of the deaths, about 680. Only about 160 people in the toll died from completely unrelated reasons, with about 140 still being investigated. The COVID-19 Minister, Chris Hipkins, says all the COVID deaths are a tragedy, but New Zealand has weathered the storm better than many other countries.
To sport, and Katie Martin, New Zealand's longest-serving modern-day cricketer, has finally called time on her career. The 37-year-old wicket-keeper's 19-year international career included 103 one-day internationals, 95 T20s and one test. Her 169 domestic one-day games is a New Zealand record for men and women. Martin's final game for New Zealand was the World Cup match against Pakistan in March.
I definitely knew just before that Pakistan game that I was ready to give it up, and as everyone says, you're grateful to play one game, but to have the longevity and play 199 games for your country is, it's sort of a little bit mind-blowing and overwhelming.
The Highlanders hooker Liam Coltman is to join French top 14 club Lyon on a two-year deal. I'll say that again, on a 2-year deal at the end of the Super Rugby competition. Coltman has played 8 tests for the All Blacks and has been with the Highlanders for 12 years. The Northern Mystics netball coach, Helene Wilson, is stepping down at the end of the ANZ Premiership season after 6 years in the job. She's taking up a new role with High Performance Sport New Zealand as manager of the organisation's Women in High Performance Sport programme. The programme addresses the underrepresentation of women in leadership and coaching in top-level sport. And Biniam Gourmet made history as the first Black African winner of a Grand Tour stage, but then had to go to hospital after an accident while celebrating. Eritrea's Gourmet won stage 10 of the Giro d'Italia, but then had to go to hospital after hitting himself in the eye with a Prosecco cork when he opened the bottle to celebrate on the podium. That's the news.
The global economy is slowing. We've got the stresses of COVID that still exist, plus the global inflation spike. So putting together a budget in this period of time has definitely been a challenge.
The process of getting there and borrowing all that money will be highly inflationary, and that's something we can ill afford at this time. I can't think of any less appropriate change to fiscal policy.
He is spending more than ever, and he is pushing out New Zealand's pathway to surplus.
I'm Corin Dan. Join me tomorrow at 2 p.m. for Finance Minister Grant Robertson's 5th budget. We'll take the budget live and we'll have reaction from our specialist reporters. That's tomorrow at 2 p.m. on RNZ National.
You're on Checkpoint with Lisa Owen next. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Thursday. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula. Periods of rain in Northland, possibly heavy, spreading southwards from the late afternoon. Waikato, Bay of Plenty and Rotorua. Cloudy, rain developing tomorrow morning with heavy falls in the east. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, cloudy. Occasional rain developing about Gisborne tomorrow morning and further south from tomorrow afternoon. Mainly fine today from Waitomo to Wellington. Showers developing tomorrow morning with squally thunderstorms developing from the afternoon north of Wellington. Fine in Nelson and Marlborough, a few showers developing tomorrow morning. Thunderstorms are possible about the Sounds and Golden Bay. Canterbury, Otago and Southland, partly cloudy. Rain developing south of Wanaka this evening, turning to showers tomorrow. Some will be heavy. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, rain with some heavy falls and squally thunderstorms in Fiordland, spreading elsewhere from this evening. And for Kohu, the Chatham Islands, fine spells, a few showers developing tomorrow. It's 7 minutes past 5. I'll have news headlines for you at 5:30.
Nā mihi iwi, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Patients and staff could start moving out of Hutt Hospital's quake-prone main block within weeks. The building is at just 15% of the current code, meaning it needs to close and services move out. And the services are many: a maternity wing, children's ward, a coronary care unit, a burns unit among the main ones. Now, the search is on across the region to find beds and care for the potentially thousands of patients affected. Ruth Hill reports.
Wainui Martin mum Crystal Nikara is scared. It was scary enough to have her 10-year-old daughter diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in March, without the added stress of knowing the children's ward is in a quake-prone building.
Versus the fear of my daughter going into a diabetic coma and a 15% chance of that building falling in an earthquake, I'm going to take the diabetic coma. I have to go there, what else am I going to do? Because it's a split minute or two, it can happen in a blink of an eye. Her levels could be fine and then 10 minutes later they could not be.
Mrs Nikara, who has 11 children, 7 of whom still live at home, says an even scarier prospect is not knowing where they will go if the children's ward has to be closed. Over the last 3 months, her daughter has had 4 week-long stays in hospital and has been in and out of the emergency department about 10 times.
I need them there for the safety of my baby. I really, really need them there. All the specialists are there. Everybody that knows her and has been through this whole journey with her is there.
The seismic rating of the Herotanga block, which includes maternity, the children's ward, general surgery, orthopaedics and the regional burns unit, is just 15% of the new building standard. Duty nurse manager Nathan Clark, who's also a nurses organisation delegate, says it's going to mean huge disruption for staff if services shift to Wellington or Keneparu.
Ask anybody that's had to go for an appointment in town how much of a nightmare it is trying to get in and out of Newtown and parking and those sorts of things. When you suddenly put an extra 240 beds in there, it would compound the problem even more, let alone staff trying to get in there for work.
Midwives fear maternity services could collapse. The head of the College of Midwives, Alison Eddy, says the Hutt was already grappling with huge staff shortages.
Expecting people to travel to access services in Wellington is not going to be feasible, I think, as an interim strategy, and certainly Wellington Hospital won't be able to absorb that number of births anyway. So, they really do need to look at how they're going to maintain a locally based service.
The Tauranga block has 210 beds and accounts for 25% of hospital capacity across the Wellington region. The DHB says it's considering all options to relocate services. Chief Medical Officer John Tate has suggested private hospitals and rest homes could help. Aged Care Association head Simon Wallace says that's ironic.
The DHB is actively poaching our nurses, paying them $20,000 to $30,000 more. Now they have a facility that is earthquake prone and they want us to take their patients, but we don't have the registered nurses to be able to do that. It's just crazy.
Just in the last week, the region has lost 50 aged care beds permanently due to the lack of nurses. Meanwhile, private surgical hospitals are standing by to pick up more elective procedures. Evolution Healthcare Chief Executive Sue Channon says its Wakefield and Bowen hospitals currently have 11 operating theatres and 76 beds between them.
If needed, we can support with additional capacity to make sure patients get access to the services they need when they need it. But this would be an extension of the partnership that already exists. So we are currently working with the local DHBs and providing services.
The DHB says it's working to a number of timeframes, but services could be out of the building within a year. However, the Health Minister says it's likely to be weeks rather than months. He's reassured Hutt residents there's no danger they're going to lose their hospital.
We are committed to a hospital and hospital services in the Hutt Valley. This is going to be disruptive though, and there will be some inconvenience to people for a while. We want to make sure that is as for short a time as possible.
Andrew Little is meeting with the Lower Hutt Mayor and local MPs tonight to talk about plans for the hospital.
It is 12 minutes past 5. Kia mau tonu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Ex-candidate in the Tauranga by-election has called for Commissioner Anne Tolley's head. In Cameron Luxton's words, the right to choose who speaks for us is our democratic birthright. But nobody told Anne Tolley, Tauranga's Marie Antoinette. It's time Tauranga gave her the same treatment. The power has gone to her head, and we say off with it. Former National MP and Minister Anne Tolley was appointed Commission Chair after the collapse of the City's Council. I asked Cameron Luxton why he was so annoyed with her.
It's just the disrespect that Tauranga has been getting for a long time, and it needs someone to stand up for it. And this is a particular scenario in which I've been summoned to a meeting with the commissioners, and just the tone of the entire invitation has been, you need to come and hear how we think Tauranga should be governed, whereas it's really up to the people of Tauranga to decide what they prioritise and what they think the future of Tauranga should be like. So to have a unelected commissioner acting as if she is commissioners with Dan Tolley as the chair, acting as if she has some insight into the community that no one else has, without ever having to stand in an election, really is, I think, quite an insulting thing to be said. She also intimated that there was a lot of, what was the term she shouldn't quite say misinformation, but a lot of candidates. She implied that candidates in this by-election were not across the issues that really mattered to Tauranga, which, as someone myself, I grew up here. Like, I've got my family and my business here. I'm out in the community talking to people. For her to imply that I'm not across the issues, or whether, vaguely imply that candidates are not across the issues, I think that is rather an unfortunate choice of words for someone who is not actually an elected leader of our town. If she wants to be the mayor and represent Tauranga, she should stand in a by-election, in an election to be the mayor. And if she doesn't, well, she should stay out of politics and not weigh in and tell the people of Tauranga, try and lead the people of Tauranga in a political way. If she's going to be apolitical, then that's how she has to operate.
So, Cameron, who have you likened her to, and what do you say should happen to her?
Well, I mean, she's acting, as she's been appointed by the Labor Party, the Labor government, and without any proper scrutiny of her, and it's very akin to a certain Queen of France leading up to the Revolution. And Marie Antoinette was aloof from the population, overpaid, underworked, and generally not aware of the issues that were facing the people in the community, because she was never put there by the people in the community. She was put there by outside forces. So, yeah, I've likened her to Marie Antoinette.
And her fate should be what, have you said, Cameron?
Well, when things go wrong, people's heads should roll, is the way we talk about things in this country. And in this particular thing, I think the head of the commission should roll. She should not be getting involved in politics, in the political side of things. If she wants to be if she's going to be a commissioner, then she should follow the what was set out by the Minister of Local Government when she appointed when Nanaima Huta, as Minister of Local Government, appointed her as a commission. There was a role set out, one of which was to facilitate a democratic election. And she should not be getting, and Tolley should not be getting involved in politics and telling people of Tauranga what they think.
Cameron, I just want to read you your press statement, part of
Sure.
it. Yep. You say, it's time Tauranga gave her the same treatment, referring to Marie Antoinette. The power has gone to her head, and we say off with it. You spoke earlier about unfortunate choice of words. Do you think that's unfortunate choice of words on your part?
Well, not at all. I mean, have you ever asked for someone's head to roll, Lisa?
The way it's written here infers violence.
Well, no, it doesn't. I mean,
the power has gone to her head, and we say off with it.
Well, off with their power. I mean, what are you talking about here? I mean, it's a general way people talk about political appointments in this country, and I don't think it's untoward at all.
You've said that she has misspoken in the words that she has used.
Yeah.
Can you not apply that same scrutiny to the words you have used here?
If I said she's misspoken, that's not what I mean. I mean, she's spoken in a thing, I don't think she said things that she didn't agree were true. So when you say misspoken, I don't think she'd said something. So I don't think she has said something she didn't mean to say. So in this particular scenario, I don't think my choice of words were untoward at all. What I have said is that head should roll. I mean, it's just another way of saying it. And if that's a problem for you, Lisa, I hope you watch your words in the future as well.
I'm just wondering, Cameron, do you think there is a difference between saying head should roll and using the expression the power has gone to her head and we say off with it?
Well, off with the power. I mean, what's the problem here? Are you seriously intimating that I'm asking for the guillotine to be pulled out? I mean, that's just irresponsible, isn't it?
I'm asking you if you have any regrets about your choice of words.
No, I do not.
And that's Cameron Luxton, the ex-Tauranga candidate. Ho mai o whakaaro, we would love your feedback. Nō reira anei na kaupapa mō te hōtaka nei. Let us know your thoughts on anything you've heard on the programme. Let us know what you think of that choice of words from the ACT MP. Off with her head, it was, wasn't it? Off with it. The power has gone to her head and we say off with it. You can text me, Pātui Mai, 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or you can send us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. It's budget eve, but before getting bogged down in the numbers, big promises and politics, Checkpoint wanted to talk to some ordinary hardworking Kiwis. We wanted to know what's important to them as they deal with the impact of an ongoing pandemic, skyrocketing living costs and unresolved social inequities. So Nick Trubert and cameraman Nick Monroe headed to Aotearoa Town Centre to talk to locals about the big needs in their community.
Hi, my name's Eric Perry. Lived in the area for about 12 years. Our education has really dropped. I think we need more education for our children out there. There's a lot of problems with our youth out there that are selling a lot of drugs, especially marijuana. I see pea bags all over the streets, marijuana houses just out there. It's just no good for our families and that. A lot of people are suffering out there.
Kia ora, my name's Alison. Government needs to spend more on education, and that's all I think they should do. Money should go more into education than anything else, because I believe The younger children need a better life.
Hey, my name is Fred, and I think our community needs more, more cheap stuff. I guess it will help with these ram raids that are going on. Like, if the prices were good, they wouldn't have to go out of their way to get a cheaper bargain or a free one.
Kia ora, my name is Brian, and I just think in Aotearoa we need to have a lot more education with our young people, because there's a lot of them that are out window washing, doing things like that, and I think they're using them for gangs, a lot of them, and you talk to them, like I talk to some of them and say, boy, go to school, why are you here? And they just look at me and they don't give a damn, and you know that they've been used, you know.
Hi, my name is Janine Tamati, and I work for healthcare, and I'm fed up with the government and the way they're behaving, especially when I have to look after somebody else's child who is deaf. He's got no help, nobody's helping me, and yet I've got COVID at the moment, and I'm just fed up with the government.
All prices will come down everywhere. People are living in a complicated world because of financial situations. But therefore, for those that are there, think wisely, spend wisely, and be yourself.
Kia ora, my name is Tabu. I noticed I reckon we need help with programs after school to keep the kids occupied, because when kids get bored, kids get into mischief, so you need to keep them occupied, keep them in a safe environment. Probably need more food banks, because times are hard for people, and some people would understand that, I would understand that. But yeah, I really think we need to start thinking about the kids.
Kia ora, this is Warra Masters. I think our money should be spending on kids' education, on health, and in Aotearoa. Thank you.
And if you were listening to that from our two Nicks, we will put the video up on our webpage. They were speaking there to people in the Otara Town Centre about what they would like to see in tomorrow's budget. The soaring cost of living is playing out in the far north, with people sleeping in cars, begging for food and seeking support in astronomical numbers. When it comes to poverty and crime, Kaitaia has felt it for years, but locals say it's getting worse. They desperately want some sort of reprieve from the price of petrol, food and rent. Our reporter Katie Todd and camera operator Marika Habazi are in Kaitaia.
It's a drizzly day in Kaitaia, tucked among the rolling hills and vast beaches of the far north. A whopping 79% of children here live below the poverty line. The average income is below $20,000.
Fuel and food. So we live 30 minutes over on the coast, and we've got a petrol up to get here to do shopping because it's our only supermarket, and food is ridiculous.
People say the first thing they're sacrificing is their health.
It seems to be the unhealthy food's cheaper than the healthy food.
Sophie Smith-Cressy was shopping for supplies for the local food bank she runs when she saw a man buy steak from the supermarket on special and then eat it raw. He told her he had nowhere to cook. She says people now regularly sleep in their cars behind her office and use the town's public showers.
This family came in and we put eggs in the box, and he was a 4-year-old kid, and he was having a look at what was in the food parcel. And he says, "Mum, we've got eggs. Come on, hurry up, let's go." And you could see him salivating.
Her food bank Fresh Start is actually the backup for people who've already maxed out their allowance at the town's other 2 more mainstream food banks. Still, Sophie Smith-Cressy describes the number of desperate families coming in the door this year as astronomical. If wages and benefits don't go up, Sophie fears the situation will keep spiralling.
So you not only got people who are mentally unwell because of the stress, the depression, because they can't feed their families. You've got people with existing ailments like diabetes, asthma, cirrhosis of the liver. All those things get ramped up tenfold.
Another social service trying to help via budgeting support is Rongopai House, but recent rises in the cost of living have made staff like Hayley Fryer feel limited in what they can do.
I was doing my click and collect with Pack and Save the other day, and I noticed that yogurt, 6-pack of yogurt that was $3.89 last week is now $5.20. How are people supposed to survive with that? If a person who's working cannot survive, I can't imagine how beneficiaries are going.
Rongopai's Roberta Kaio explains rent eats up most of people's income. Because MSD considers Kaitaia a cheap place to live, accommodation supplements are kept well below $200, but that doesn't go far anymore.
For a standard 3-bedroom home, you have to pay, I think the minimum is like $400 to $500 a week.
Kaitaia Primary School is also doing its best to keep kids fed and in class by offering free stationery and food and school shirts for just $10. Principal Brendan Morrissey started those initiatives 10 years ago and says poverty seems to have worsened in that time. He says top of his wish list for tomorrow's budget is more help for families to feed their children.
One of the things I'd really love to hear in the budget announcement, I don't think I'm going to, but I'd love to, would be removing GST off fresh fruit and vegetables to make that achievable for our whānau to buy.
Brendan Morrissey says Kaitaia is not worth giving up on. He wants the government to hear that message loud and clear as well.
The era of hybrid working could be upon us as inner city businesses invite employees back into the office. TradeMe data also shows an increase of more than 200% in listings that mention work from home in the description. So post-pandemic, what will the new normal look like and how keen are staff to return to the office? Our reporter Leah Tebbit went to find out if the office is still competing with the kitchen table or batch as a workplace.
Yeah, I do like working from home, and if it was a choice, I would do it. But due to the nature of my job, I do have to be here.
Eli is one of many people enjoying some lunchtime fresh air outside the hustle and bustle of his Auckland office, although he tells me the city's not as busy as it used to be. Auckland's Chamber of Commerce Chief Executive would like to see more businesses bringing their employees back.
Probably the best thing that could happen in the city right now would be if government and the government agencies all brought their people back, because government is the largest employer, and if they were to bring their people back, that would make a difference to what's happening in the centre of Auckland.
Michael Barnett says retail and hospitality businesses need foot traffic to survive, and central or local government offices can lead the charge by bringing their workers back. But times have changed, and he notes no business is likely to operate as it was pre-pandemic.
What employers have learned, there's a huge amount of trust in each other, and I think the outcome from that is going to be that people are going to work some days in the office and some days at home.
TradeMe data shows a work-life balance is now a priority for most employees, with 62% of survey respondents stating it's the most important factor in an ideal role. And last month saw a 77% year-on-year increase in job listings mentioning working from home, up from a 213% increase on the year before when much of the country was in and out of lockdown. At ANZ's peak, about 7 out of 8,000 employees were working from home. Michelle Russell says she hopes the 35% who've come back to the office will increase to 70% when she formally calls them back later this month.
There's a lot of people that have started with ANZ during the last couple of years that actually haven't physically met their team members, so they're only artificial relationships at the best. I think that whole learning environment and learning from each other, collaborating, just so much richer when you can do it in person.
Miss Russell says having people in the office means fewer meetings, which streamlines their processes. But people on the streets of Auckland today are divided.
I'm in the office pretty much as soon as I could get back in. I just prefer working in amongst people.
Yeah, I can work from home. It doesn't matter. As long as you got a sale, then they got the money, that they're happy, so it's very flexible for them.
It was a difficult transition going straight from work from home back to the office, but having those couple of days that I can work from home really does help.
Anna Hill said she has been working to revitalise many workplaces in order to entice workers back. The lead interior designer for Jasmax, an architectural firm, says respite space in workplaces are key.
The office is competing with the cool cafe down the road, your beach house. So it's not just an office space anymore that you need to design. We need to design this whole mixed use of functions that can cater to every type of work.
And that report from Leah Tebbit. Now, we've just got a statement from Tauranga Commission Chair Anne Tolley. This is in response to Cameron Luxton's press release about her in comparison with Marie Antoinette. And Anne Tolley says, it's unfortunate that one candidate has chosen to play political games rather than focusing on the needs of the community he aspires to represent. The Commission has made a genuine attempt to engage with all by-election candidates on behalf of the Council and the community to highlight some issues which should be taken seriously. Kia ora e te iwi e haere ake nei e a checkpoint calls for subsidised antibody tests to identify people suffering from long COVID. Is the future of public transport buses that stop on demand, like right at your doorstep? And it's take two for Connie the turtle, who's had a rough few years on and off in rehab. Homai o whakaaro, we would love your feedback on anything you've heard on the programme, especially on working from home. Are you back in the office? Are you still working from home, or a mix of both? Which do you prefer and why? You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Let's get to the headlines now. Ko Iwi anō tēnei.
The Secondary Teachers Union claims an increasing number of staff and students aren't feeling safe at school. A 15-year-old has been charged with wounding with intent after an incident at Tauranga College in Wellington. A person is in intensive care with serious injuries. PPTA President Melanie Webber says violence in schools is rising and urgent change is needed to make them safer. Meanwhile, a meeting is being held at Aotearoa College in Auckland tonight after two recent fights among students on school grounds. A union for nurses says moving out of Hutt Hospital's main building will add more pressure to already stretched staff. The Tauranga block has been deemed an earthquake risk and only meets 15% of the new building standard. It houses maternity and children's services, general surgery and orthopaedic and burns wards. However, all functions will be moved to other hospitals or temporary spaces. There are 9,570 new community cases of COVID-19 and 32 deaths, including a person in their 20s. The total number of people who've died with COVID-19 is now more than 1,000. Meanwhile, changes to pre-departure COVID tests for travellers arriving in New Zealand are on the cards. Regional leaders in Hawke's Bay could seek a judicial review into decisions made about the Napier to Taupo Road. Many locals were angry when the speed limit on State Highway 5 dropped from 100 kilometres an hour to 80. The Regional Transport Committee claims the Transport Agency has failed to follow its own rules. Auckland's Chamber of Commerce says central and local government should lead by example and bring their employees back to the office. CEO Michael Barnett says retail and hospitality businesses rely on foot traffic and they're currently not getting much. And the Westland District Mayor, Bruce Smith, has been airlifted to Christchurch Hospital due to illness. He's been Westland District Mayor for 6 years. Those are the headlines. Our next news and weather is at 6.
Kia ora rā e ho, no mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. It is time for the business news now. Ko taku hoa e nai nei, ko Nona Peltier, who's in the studio. This is really topical, this particular story, Nona. Electric car charging. So a new competitor is entering the market. Who is it? What do you know?
Well, the company is called Jolt. And they're from I love the name. That's quite good. They're planning to rival the monopoly. Where at the moment we have an organisation called ChargeNet, and they're the ones who run the chargers throughout the network through the country. But Jolt is planning to bring in 500 over the next 4 years, beginning from July, and it's going to be free. So, pretty good. Free, that's
How does that work? How does that business model work?
Well, it works because they're going to subject the users to advertising while they're getting their fast charge. Well, that's fine. I mean, they're going to partner with Mitre 10, so I suppose it's going to be hardware and other things. But in any case, it's a 7 kilowatts of free charging, which is enough to get a vehicle, say, 40, 50 kilometres. So free for, those little short bursts.
That is going to be interesting in how they're going to subject you to that advertising. Okay, let's talk about the Commerce Commission. It's asking the High Court to increase a multi-million-dollar fine levied against Vodafone. Why do they want to up the ante?
Well, because I don't think it's a sufficient fine. It relates to activities that took place between 2016 and 2018. Vodafone was advertising a product called FiberX. And basically, the commission took them to court because they said that it misled customers because it wasn't. There was a number of reasons why. Well, Vodafone is going to appeal that decision, and they're saying. Meanwhile, the Commerce Commission is saying the fine's not big enough, and Vodafone's saying, well, it's unfair to begin with. They're going to go back to
rumbles
court.
On.
It's going to rumble on, but in any case. We haven't heard the end of that one.
Okay, let's take a spin around the markets then.
Oh, I better look for my biz chat then. Here we go. Yes, the local top 50 index, it did really well. It rose 1% today, which is better than it's done for a while. 120-point gain to 11,258. The New Zealand dollar is also just ticked up slightly. 63.5 US cents, which isn't too bad. 90.6 Australian, but a little bit down against the pound at 50.9 pence. Anyway, the reason why is the US dollar continues to hold court. It's still really strong.
Okay, big day tomorrow, budget day. Talk to you then, Nona.
I'll be back.
Nona Peltier with Business News. Fewer COVID restrictions means it's not just humans now catching winter ills kept at bay during border closures and lockdowns. Our canine friends are copping it too. Cases of the highly contagious canine infectious respiratory disease, or kennel cough, are on the rise around the country right now. It's a tricky one because it's often been caused by both a bacteria and viruses. The good news is, like COVID, there's a vaccination. Well, joining us now is Seaton Butler from the Veterinary Council. Hi, Seaton. Why is this on the rise, do you reckon?
Hi, Lisa, and thanks for having me on. Why is it on the rise? I'm no epidemiologist, but I suspect that we've always got a seasonal lift in the number of cases of canine cough. We don't want to blame kennels entirely for this. It happens with doggy daycares and parks and that sort of thing. But we've just had school holidays and we've just come out of a large period of lockdown where our pets have been relatively isolated from other pets. And part of the immunity that the general dog population has is via vaccination, but there's another piece around that we sort of commonly term street immunity, which is small doses of kennel cough happening on and off all the time, keeping a reasonable level of immunity in a population, but they haven't come across anything for 2 years, so they're a bit more exposed or vulnerable now.
And so what does this look and sound like, kennel cough?
So it's a honking cough often, in its severest form. It can be something as subtle as a sneeze, a bit depressed and off food as well. In really bad cases, and it's not that common, so I don't want anybody panicking, but in really bad cases it can result in pneumonia and dogs needing to be hospitalised. But it's not that extreme very often. Usually that's a more vulnerable animal or dog that's going to end up in that situation.
And it's pretty contagious, isn't it?
Yes, it's like many of the respiratory viruses, as we've spent 2 years learning about. We're all epidemiologists and scientists now. That aerosoling of virus particles and bacteria particles and mycoplasma and other things that contribute to it are relatively easily transmitted, especially when you've got dogs close together in boarding establishments or at doggy daycare or just at the dog park, within a fenced area. And we drove past our one the other day and there must have been 30 dogs in there. And it's higher than normal concentration of dogs. And so a bit of sneezing and coughing and there you go.
So, Seaton, if you got a pet that's going to doggy daycare or going into a kennel, what should you be looking for from those facilities in terms of infection control and good practice?
Great question. So most of them, I imagine, and certainly the ones we've been to, have a requirement that the dog's currently vaccinated. And you want to make sure as a pet owner that your vaccine includes the kennel cough vaccine. So there are a bunch of vaccines dogs get, and there probably isn't time to go into all of them here, but the kennel cough one can be included or not, depending on what the owner of the dog wants and what the veterinarian recommends, and so there's a conversation to be had there, but certainly make sure you've got the kennel cough component of that vaccine included in your annual vaxes. I think probably, look, it's a bit. I think we've learned a lot with COVID, and I think the thing here is there shouldn't be any blame. This is a transmissible disease. It's viral. You can't stop it. It's about managing it, and New Zealand's done a great job of managing it, and kennels will no doubt be doing the same if they come across this. And that is, are they checking everybody's vaccine card? Have they got good airflow? Have they got good hygiene practices? Those sort of things that we're all aware of now. If you just ask those questions of those establishments, hopefully they're going to give you the right answers. And I think we're pretty familiar with what that should sound like.
Not being funny, but do you isolate your dog?
If
they're infected.
I think responsible pet owners, if their dog starts coughing, would keep the pet at home, maybe take it for a walk, so it's not in contact with any other dogs if they need to take the dog out, because obviously some dogs really need a walk. They go crazy if they don't have them. But I'd also contact friends that have got dogs that your dog's been in contact with, or the establishment they might have been to, let them know that you've got some symptoms, talk to your vet.
So contact trace your dog, Seaton. In short, contact trace your dog.
Basically, yes,
okay.
Yes, that would be really good, really responsible, because everybody wants to know if their dog's been in contact, what to look for.
All right. So there is a vaccination, as you point out, but there's also a shortage of vets at the moment, right? You're on the list for people we'd love to bring into the country. Yes. I'm just wondering, how under the pump are vet clinics at the moment, and are they prioritising crisis cases ahead of, what would be regular catch-up appointments like vaccinations?
Yeah, so look, great question, absolutely, and I don't know how much time you've got for this conversation. Yes, they are under the pump. We speak to vets regularly. There is a shortage. There's a shortage globally, Lisa. There aren't enough vets for the world, and that contributes to New Zealand's unique situation where we've had a border closed for a long period of time. It's not necessarily where everybody wants to come anyway. We love New Zealand, but not everybody's going to jump across here. And we've got one vet school that can only churn out so many vets in a year, and our demand has gone up over COVID. We know that the dog-owning population has increased and cat-owning population, and so the demand on vet clinics has multiplied. We also know as a population that veterinarians like to do their OE, and so the young ones that have been locked in the country for 2 years have probably got itchy feet and want to get off overseas. Can't blame them. And so, yes, we hear from clinics regularly that they are under the pump. They are having to sometimes prioritise, as you said, prioritise vaccines, for example. And we know that there's a shortage in some areas for after-hours vets. We just can't get enough. So, big call out from me. Shout out to the vets out there. Please give them a break. If they're stressed, it's because they're trying to do the best and they can't keep up.
Sounds like it's something we need to follow up on, Seaton. We're out of time. I want a one-word answer to this. Can your dog get kennel cough more than once?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hey, really appreciate you joining us this evening. That's Seaton Butler from the Veterinary Council there. Birds have fled, humans want to leave, and even the midges have gone. Christchurch's damaged wastewater plant is driving everyone away with its horrendous stench. The plant's oxidation ponds double as a wildlife reserve and are now also one of the worst causes of the smell. Neva Chittick went to check it out.
Road signs warning of pukekos crossing Bromley's Dyers Road used to alert drivers to the scores of birds on the oxidation ponds. But since the fire, local resident Damien Alley has noticed a big change in the water.
The water appearance is definitely stale, and like the edge of the concrete couple of metres in the water gives a real solid effect. And that's usually particles that you'd notice, some sort of build-up. I'm not 100% sure what it is.
He claims it's impacting the surrounding environment.
We're not seeing midges. Midges were a huge problem. We're not seeing birds. We're not seeing eels. We're not seeing anything alive anymore. So the reality is that wildlife's gone. Now the reason the wildlife's gone is because this is dead. The water's dead. There's no oxygen in the water. And nothing can live in the water.
The stench is strong at the side of the water because Mr. Alley says the raw waste isn't being treated to the same quality as before the fire destroyed the trickling filters.
We've lost the roofs to them. We can't use them anymore. We're going to have to fix them. Well, the reality is where's it going then? Straight into these, this is called Bromley Wildlife Reserve. Wildlife Reserve. Well, they can't live here. The people of the community just about can't live here, but unfortunately we can't pack up and just go like the birds can.
Environment Canterbury is treating the effects from the wastewater treatment plant as an odour problem, and Christchurch City Council has not released any results from water testing. The council will offer financial and wellbeing compensation to residents in the immediate vicinity. The details are yet to be decided. But Joe, who lives in Burwood, a few suburbs to the north of the plant, doubts that's enough.
In my mind, I'm thinking like up a couple of streets that are very, very close next to the plant. I would say at least, at the very minimum, the entirety of Bromley need that assistance, not just the immediate vicinity of the plant.
Since the stench got bad there 6 weeks ago, she has been sleeping with a eucalyptus tissue over her face, and she says her son's asthma is worse. She hopes the council use a different criteria system, not just street names or postcodes.
It's horrendous. My youngest, he has asthma. So, it really concerns me. What damage could that be doing to him as well? I'm considering going to the doctors. His asthma continues to be bad.
Today, Christchurch City Council cancelled its free wellbeing workshops for the community due to a lack of interest. It says it's open to holding them again in the future on the community's request. Specific compensation options like reimbursement for air purifiers, free healthcare appointments and paid trips to hot pools will be put to councillors in a meeting next Thursday.
With just 3 days to go, the race in Australia's election is tightening. Labor retains a slight lead while the coalition's support has lifted. But after almost 6 weeks of campaigning, are any of the political messages and promises resonating with voters? The ABC's David Sparks has more.
On the main shopping strip in Riverwood in southwest Sydney, people are popping in and out of greengrocers and other shops. So, in the midst of their busy lives, has anyone been giving Saturday's election much thought?
I want to see a change. A change about inflation, about the life is getting harder and harder for the next generation, especially houses, especially the rent.
Sounds like you're more worried about other people than yourself.
I got family, of course. I've been here over 45 years, and I know they used to call it the lucky country. But change. You worry about your future kid, how they're going to in and live and survive and have their own home. It's very hard.
During the campaign, 5 weeks, have you heard anything that's cut through to you on that level?
I want to see Labour's Mr Albanese start to make a bit of changes that might change the future of Australia.
Sir, have you decided who to vote for?
No, not yet. I made up my mind on the election day.
When you walk in?
Yeah, I think so. Toss the coin.
Are there any issues that you care about?
The cost of living is soaring, and I have to spend money on my mortgage and stuff. And,
right,
all the variable rate interest.
You worried about the interest rates? Yeah.
Because I just bought my property a month ago, and still waiting for settlement. And I put 100% on, variable rate interest. So, yeah.
Riverview is in the electorate of Banks, which is held by Liberal MP David Coleman. He won the seat off Labor in 2013, the year the coalition was returned to power, and he's held it ever since. For this voter, there was a moment from the first leaders' debate a month ago that stuck in her mind.
I guess Scott Morrison's view and a few things that he said, I think, a couple of weeks ago in relation to his children not having a disability, that was a big thing for me.
He said he and his wife were blessed to have not had that situation.
To have not had that situation, yeah.
That offended you?
It did.
Why?
I have a child that has autism, so to me, it sort of hit a little bit hard. Yeah, so I believe that he shouldn't have really said what he said, yeah.
Are you thinking a lot about the election, sir, or not really?
No, not really at the moment.
Is that pretty normal for you heading into election?
Yeah, I mean, there's other stuff that's their priority other than the election. Yeah.
You do know there's an election on Saturday?
Yeah.
Have you decided who you're going to vote for or not yet?
Nah, not at all.
Are you close to deciding or not?
No, not at all, man.
Have you heard anything in the campaign that's caught your interest that any side has said or anything?
That'll be the missus. The missus that is for me, mate.
Is she pretty reliable? She'll tell you who to vote for?
Yeah, she'll tell me, yeah. She's with everything else in life too,
Connie, the green turtle, should finally be cruising free at sea after being released following a second stint in turtle rehab. Back in 2018, she was found stranded in Henderson Bay in the far north, weighing just 18 kilos, less than half what she should be. The team at Kelly Tarleton's nursed her back to tip-top condition and let her loose in 2019. But Connie bounced back in less than ideal circumstances. And in true turtle style, it's been a slow recovery until now. Jessica van der Paar from Sea Life Kelly Tarleton's aquarium joins us now. Hi, Jessica. Can Connie be trusted out there?
Hi, yeah. We have no doubt she's in the absolute best condition to survive out there. And yeah, we're just super happy she gets this second chance at life.
So it wasn't her first rodeo in rehab. Can you tell us what happened the second time, how she came back to your attention?
Yeah, so she came back to us in 2020. She was quite sick. She had chronic pneumonia and she had problems with her digestion. This could have been from ingesting plastics, which is quite common for sea turtles out there.
Sea junk, basically, in her tummy.
Yeah, so it's quite common for sea turtles. They live a pretty hard life out there.
Were you with her when she got released?
Yep, me and two others went up to Rangiputa Beach and released her just a week ago.
Tell us about that. What was it like?
It was so awesome to see her just swim out there and be free again, just back in her home. It's such a bittersweet feeling to see them go.
So she was well underweight when you first got her. Why was that?
Yeah, so this could have been from ingesting the plastic. This just blocks up their digestive systems and then it just stops them from getting the right food and nutrients into them, and then they just lose weight, and it's quite sad.
Jessica, how do you know it's her? Is she tagged? Was she tagged after the first time?
Yep, so all the turtles we release, we give them little flipper tags and microchips, so she still had those flipper tags on with her identification number. So, yeah, we knew exactly who it was Connie.
And having sort of been around her for a few years on and off now, what can you tell us about her and her personality?
She's an awesome turtle. She loves scratches from the divers. I think she loves humans a bit more than other turtles. She was a bit aggressive to the other turtles, so we had to move her actually into a different tank because, she just loved to fight them.
And I understand she's a bit of a speed swimmer.
Yeah, she's speedy. When we had to catch her out for health checks and stuff, she was very nippy and very good at getting away from the divers.
So not wanting to be awful about it, Jessica, you'd be hoping you never see Connie again, I assume.
Yeah, I really hope she doesn't wash up for a third time. That'll be definitely a first for Kelly Tarleton's.
So with the kind of tags that she's got on her, can you check her location remotely?
No, not Connie. If we give them a satellite tag, we can track them, but Connie doesn't have a satellite tag.
Well, let's hope she doesn't bounce back. Thanks for joining us. That's Jessica van der Paar, who's with Sea Life Kelly Tarleton's aquarium and was there when they released Connie. The government's being urged to implement long-term solutions to tackle poverty in Pacific communities. There are also calls to address rising health issues for Pacifica, which have been exacerbated during the pandemic. Alicia Foon has more.
The rising cost of living is hitting Pacific communities particularly hard. Many Pacific high school students haven't been back to school since the pandemic because they've had to work to help their family pay the bills. Alchadan Tautolo is an associate professor at the Centre for Pacific Health and Development Research at AUT and says covering the basics is a struggle for many.
We all know just in our daily lives the rising costs of things, groceries and supermarket prices and petrol in Auckland anyway is just ridiculous, over $3. So, how is all that? That's having a huge impact on our communities.
More than 25% of Pacific children in New Zealand live in poverty, according to research released last year from the Child Poverty Monitor. Auckland University sociologist Dr. Siriana Naipi says the government must move past band-aid solutions.
You can't budget your way out of poverty. And so really what we need is an increase in wages. We need to do something about inflation. We need to close the Pacific pay gap.
She says it's crucial the pay gap gets attention in tomorrow's budget.
In 2020, if you're a Pākehā with a bachelor's degree or higher, you earned $36.29 an hour. And if you were Pacific, it was $31.24 an hour. It means that Pacific students with bachelors are earning $10,500 less every year, even with the same qualification. But we can legislate in ways that enable us to address racism that we experience in our pay.
She says it's also about improving the lives of future generations.
A quarter of our babies grow up in poverty, and what does that mean for them and their families in the short term and the long term? Because they have just as much a right as everyone else to enjoy the sort of economic realities of being in Aotearoa.
South Auckland consultant paediatrician Dr. Tuila Percival wants the disparity in Pacific health outcomes to be addressed.
Long-term conditions like diabetes, heart disease, intermediate determinants of those conditions like obesity and inactivity. And then we have children's health with lots of infectious diseases still, lots of respiratory disease.
She'd also like better pathways to encourage more Pasifika to become doctors, health administrators and pharmacists. Christchurch social worker Tualipai Luella Thompson-Inda has witnessed a lot on the front lines. She urged the government to take note.
It's not enough that you just do a topping of and think it's a token gesture and think it's done. And also look at us as quite diverse. There's diversity in there. You can't put it all in the same basket. We need to have more Pacific providers in health and education.
The call for a long-term plan and lasting solutions to give Pasifika communities the tools to thrive.
White Ferns wicketkeeper Katie Martin has pulled stumps after 21 years playing representative cricket. Martin was at the top of her game for so long she played for New Zealand alongside a teammate who was born after her international debut. Felicity Reid reports.
Katie Martin is ready to give her knees a well-deserved break. Martin's 19-year international career makes her the longest-serving modern-day New Zealand cricketer. She leaves the game with 199 caps to her name, including 103 one-day internationals, 95 T20 internationals and a solitary test. Her 169 domestic one-day games is a New Zealand record for both men and women. Martin's last game for the White Ferns was the World Cup earlier this year, a tournament that didn't go to plan for the New Zealanders, but Martin has no regrets, and she wasn't tempted to push for a 200-game milestone.
I'm not much of a numbers person, to be honest, so I sort of wasn't really aware. Dad would have known more than what I knew on the number of appearances. I definitely knew just before that Pakistan game that I was ready to give it up, and as everyone says, you're grateful to play one game, but to have the longevity and play 199 games for your country is, it's sort of a little bit mind-blowing and overwhelming.
Women's T20 cricket has been included in the Commonwealth Games program for the first time in Birmingham in July. Martin's retirement leaves a hole behind the stumps. However, she believes New Zealand's wicket-keeping future is in good hands if the up-and-coming keepers get support.
Not just the technical support, but also tactically about how to read a game. As a wicket-keeper, you sort of non-named vice-captain as such. You pick up cues from the batters, you support the captain and set the angles, and you get a good feel for the game. So I guess finishing up now was important for me that the next wicketkeeper had the chance over the next few months to get into the environment and get used to that.
Martin wasn't short of a chippy comment while wearing the gloves, often getting in the ear of opposition batters or her own fielders. The 37-year-old plans to take her comments from the stump mic to the commentary mic, but she knows which of her former teammates will take up the sledging.
Melly Claire does love to talk a lot. She's good at encouraging, and hopefully I've passed on some wise words to Susie Bates around words of encouragement out there. Yeah, well, let's see what happens. I mean, I'll have to give them a few tips on some chatter, but I'm sure they'll be able to do it in their own way.
Martin came from a different time. Her teammates didn't know what she meant by dial-up internet, and she played for New Zealand before White Fern spinner Fran Jonas was born. Over her 2 decades in the first-class game, Martin witnessed cricket become more professional for women. Her hope for the next generation is to win another World Cup for New Zealand, but also remember to keep their feet on the ground.
Dial-up internet, those were the days. A lot of you getting in touch about whether you prefer working from home or at the office. Lou from Wellington says, retailers say they need foot traffic. I've been in office all year and am rarely greeted with even a hello in shops on Lambton Quay. At least online, I had a cheery bot to greet me, says Lou. Proposition needs to appeal, retailers, ! Someone else says a mix of 2 days at home and 3 at the office is the current norm. I work in screen production, planning days super efficient at home. Communicating with others, though, is valuable. Or shoot days, all depends what is on. Workplace HR is super on board with it, which we appreciate too. Another person says returning to work in the CBD, particularly Auckland, where public transport is underused, will generate more greenhouse gases. If done because it works for the employee, so be it. Demanding it to sustain otherwise uneconomic hospitality industry is unacceptable, says Steve. And this person says, working from home has freed me to focus on work and be away from the constant energy suck that is the open plan office. That is interesting. Another one says the spotlight on Aotearoa, this is about the budget, is reality and poverty is widespread. Government and councils need to address inequality in basic human allowances.
RNZ News at 6. Good evening, kia ora tātou. I'm Evie Ashton. Parents of sick children and other Hutt Valley residents with chronic illnesses fear health services will be shifted out of the area with the closure of the main hospital building due to quake problems. Hutt Valley District Health Board has confirmed the Tauranga block is just 15% of the new building standard. A Wainui-o-Mata mother, Crystal Nikara, says that's scary enough, but the threat of her 10-year-old daughter slipping into a fatal diabetic coma is more terrifying.
I have to go there, what else am I going to do? Because it's a split minute or two, it can happen in a blink of an eye. Her levels could be fine and then 10 minutes later they could not be.
Crystal Nikara says she couldn't manage her daughter's diabetes without Hutt Hospital. The Secondary Teachers Union is warning violence in schools is rising and urgent change is needed to make schools safer. It follows an attack at Tauranga College yesterday, which has left one person in intensive care with serious injuries. A 15-year-old has been charged with wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. PPTA President Melanie Webber says the rise in violence at schools is a symptom of increased stress and violence in communities.
What we're looking at is a sign of what is going on more broadly. That's the stress that these young people are under. And what we need to have happen is more skilled and experienced staff in our schools to support rangatahi and work with their families so that we can prevent these things happening in schools.
Melanie Webber says violence in schools is a scary experience for staff and students. The police have referred a 14-year-old to youth aid following an assault at Aotearoa College in Auckland last week. They're still making inquiries into another incident at the school that happened at the beginning of this month. The police say the incidents were filmed and they're concerned about the violence shown in the videos. The community is being asked to stop sharing the footage. Police say a gang-related shooting in Hawke's Bay, where a child's bedroom window was destroyed by a gunshot, had the potential to end in tragedy. Detective Senior Sergeant Mark Morehouse says the child wasn't in the room in Wairoa at the time.
A shotgun has clearly been used to do that sort of damage, and it's been fired through that bedroom window, probably without much regard for who might have been in there, and sent glass shards across the room, which raises quite significant concerns.
In another incident, a man suffered leg injuries during a drive-by shooting on May 5th. Mark Morehouse says police are concerned that people heard the gunshots and didn't report them. A scientist is calling for antibody tests to be subsidised for long COVID sufferers who have never tested positive on a rat test. If long COVID symptoms develop, it becomes extremely difficult to get help without a previous positive test. The president of the Institute of Medical Laboratory Science, Terry Taylor, has told Checkpoint that it urgently needs to change.
We need to be looking at this now. We're about 2.5 months post most people starting to get Omicron, and then we've got all the Auckland people that have had Delta. And like everything in the health system, they will no doubt fall off the radar unless we really start targeting this. 1 in 5 people who have had COVID have symptoms 3 months on.
Auckland's Chamber of Commerce Chief Executive says both central and local government should lead by example and bring their employees back to the office. Michael Barnett says retail and hospitality businesses rely on foot traffic and they're currently not getting much. However, he says Government organisations are the country's biggest employer and would quickly make a difference. Mr Barnett says he understands no business is likely to operate as it was pre-pandemic, but it should be a mix of both working from home and in the office. And Russia says it's brought a further 265 Ukrainian soldiers out of the Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol. Kyiv says that it will do everything necessary to rescue the undisclosed number of troops still inside. The BBC's James Waterhouse reports from Kyiv.
Ukraine's government isn't keen on saying just how many fighters are left in the Azovstal steel plant, but says it's doing everything possible and impossible to get them out. Yesterday, 7 buses were seen leaving the site after 264 soldiers made it out on Monday. As for the hundreds of soldiers, Marines, police, border guards and volunteers trapped inside, President Zelensky has urged for patience, saying Ukraine needs its heroes alive. Vladimir Putin claims the captured fighters will be treated in line with international laws. However, Russian MPs have put forward plans to class some of them as war criminals who couldn't be part of any kind of prisoner swap.
That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Hamish G from the Feelers puts the call out for support acts for its upcoming 21st birthday tour. Australian Michael Brasowski, founder of the Blue Dragons Children's Foundation, taking on child trafficking in Vietnam with education, advocacy and even football. And our Hunt Prize is The War of Nerves, Martin Sixsmith's history of the last Cold War, just in time for the next one, on Nights of me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7. On RNZ National.
You're back with Lisa Owen and Checkpoint next. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Thursday. Northland, Auckland and the Coromandel Peninsula. Periods of rain in Northland, possibly heavy, spreading southwards from late afternoon. Waikato, Bay of Plenty and Rotorua. Cloudy, rain developing tomorrow morning with heavy falls in the east. Cloudy for Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Waded Upper. Occasional rain developing about Gisborne tomorrow morning and further south from tomorrow afternoon. From Waitomo to Wellington, mainly fine today. Showers developing tomorrow morning with squally thunderstorms developing from the afternoon north of Wellington. Fine for Nelson and Marlborough. A few showers developing tomorrow morning. Thunderstorms are possible about the Sounds and Golden Bay. Partly cloudy for Canterbury, Otago and Southland. Rain develops south of Wanaka this evening, turning to showers tomorrow. Some will be heavy. Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, rain with some heavy falls and squally thunderstorms in Fiordland, spreading elsewhere from this evening. And for the Chatham Islands, fine spells, a few showers developing tomorrow. It's 6 minutes past 6. I'll be back with news headlines at 6:30.
Nā mihi iwi, no mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Experts say antibody testing is being underutilised as a tool to help long COVID sufferers who never tested positive on a rat. 1 in 5 people who've had COVID are still experiencing symptoms 3 months on. Researchers and lab workers say antibody testing needs urgent funding. Louise Tanuth reports.
Rat tests can be temperamental. Not everyone who's got COVID returns a positive rapid antigen test. But if long COVID symptoms develop down the track, it becomes extremely difficult to get help without a previous positive test to get the ball rolling. That's where an antibody test comes in.
It's that category of people that really will benefit from an antibody test because, you know, your body takes a while to generate antibodies, so it's not something that you do instantly. Within the first few months of your infection is the best time to go and get an antibody test for prior infection.
Senior lecturer at the University of Auckland and immunologist Anna Brooks is part of a team of international researchers investigating long COVID. With 1 in 5 people experiencing long COVID symptoms 3 months after their infection, Anna Brooks says people need to take their health into their own hands.
You know, if something crops up down the line to do with your health and you know that you definitely do or don't know that you've had COVID, it's going to be important for our understanding of managing healthcare in general to do with the impacts of this virus.
The test is costly at around $100. making it out of reach for many people. With more than 1 million cases of COVID since the pandemic began, President of the New Zealand Institute of Medical Laboratory Science, Terry Taylor, says that urgently needs to change.
We need to be looking at this now. We're about 2.5 months post most people starting to get Omicron, and then we've got all the Auckland people that have had Delta. And like everything in the health system, they will no doubt fall off the radar unless we really start targeting this. Everything we seem to do with this damn response is 2 months after it should have started.
He says this test isn't for the worried well to find out if they might have had COVID or not.
We've had enough of that. It shouldn't be an avenue just to make money. It should be a diagnostic avenue. We should be looking at the diagnostics here.
But Medical Director at the Royal New Zealand College of GPs, Brian Betty, isn't backing it just yet.
We know very little about it, where that would become useful, and how we would use it in the context of someone or a set of symptoms that could be long COVID or not becomes a real problem. And how's that validated?
He says there are still too many unknowns at this stage.
We need to know a lot more about long COVID, what exactly it is, what the symptomology is, what the natural history or course of it is, what potential treatment options are, before you could start to make any judgment about the potential for long COVID with a positive antibody.
With more than 200 symptoms associated with long COVID, he says doctors are struggling to diagnose patients.
I think it's an incredibly grey, difficult area. The problem with long COVID and post-stress symptoms around long COVID, you could attribute those to a number of other things, and this is actually going to be the difficulty that we have.
In a statement, the Ministry of Health says while they don't fund antibody testing, funding decisions are regularly reviewed depending on public health requirements and emerging evidence. The future of public transport has arrived in the Wellington suburb of Tauranga. Metlink is trialling an on-demand bus service which can pick up and drop off passengers at virtual stops, many of which are at their doorstep. Our visual journalist Samuel Rillstone went along for the ride.
It's Uber meets buses here in Tauranga. This is on-demand public transport. People can now use an app to order rides from buses operating without set routes between flexible pickup and drop-off locations, virtual stops. Each ride is $2.50 regardless of distance. It's more expensive than a traditional bus trip, but Tauranga Community Board Chair Robin Parkinson says it's worth it.
Given the level of service, the level of customisation of the service to the person, it picks you up so close to your house. It gives it such a short time frame that you have to wait. All those convenience factors that drive people into other, non-public transport. It's like being chauffeured. That's what I felt like. It's like, wow, this is crazy. It takes all the stress out of it. It's great.
It's the brainchild of the Tauranga Community Board and Greater Wellington Regional Council, a more accessible and efficient form of public transport for locals. Redwood and Linden train stations and Tauraga's CBD are key stops during peak hours, while during off-peak, passengers can travel anywhere in Tauranga. There are 5 of these 17-seat buses. They're small enough to travel into the hills of the suburb where traditional buses struggle. Parkinson says they are also a way to deal with congestion.
The traffic's gone crazy in Tauranga. I think it's over the last year or two, it's gone up by about 20%, the traffic down the main road. We're now about 20,000 cars a day going down the main road. That kind of increase is unsustainable. Just can't do that. We have to change the way we move around our community. So this is it. As far as I'm concerned, this is fantastic.
Emissions reduction is also front of mind. These buses currently run on diesel, but Greater Wellington Transport Committee Chair Roger Blakely says following the trial, the plan is to have a fully electric fleet.
40% shift we want by the end of this decade, people out of their cars into public transport, walking or cycling. Now these buses will actually make it easy not to own a car, and so that's going to be a big game change, we think, towards reducing carbon emissions. So this is climate action we're part of here.
Greater Wellington Deputy Chair of Transport David Lee says the new service removes some of the accessibility struggles of traditional public transport.
First, having a wheelchair lift, which is able to take even your power chairs. In the past, it was a real struggle. You had to go to a third party to find that type of service from door to door. I think this is going to be the new normal for public transport.
Wellington City Councillor and local Tauranga resident Jill Day says she has used the service multiple times since it began, and the convenience of door-to-door transport is a game changer.
Every time I've picked it up, it's been less than a 2-minute walk from my front door, and at the end it's actually dropped me off at my door each time. And when it's raining, it's really pleasant. Each trip is a little bit different, and that actually keeps life interesting.
The trial began exclusively in Tawa this week and will run for the next year.
Pretty interesting concept, and if you were listening to that on radio, do check out Samuel's video version of the story. It'll be on our webpage. It is 13 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. More Ukrainian soldiers have been evacuated from Mariupol's Azovstal steelworks. 7 buses were seen leaving the site today. Ukraine's Deputy Defence Minister says Kiev knows how many soldiers remain at the plant, but that it's sensitive information. The fighters are being evacuated to areas held by Russian-backed rebels, and Ukraine says it's doing everything possible to save the remaining trapped soldiers. The BBC's Laura Bicker reports.
It's been a brutal and bloody 83 days, but their battle is over, for now. The wounded from Azovstal are carried out of the vast steel plant, filmed by the very force they've been fighting. Russia will be keen to air these images, which they say show surrender. But the Ukrainians say this deal is about survival. Tonight, as more fighters lay down their arms and are taken into Russian territory, Ukrainian leaders are keen to stress this was a way to save the country's heroes. For more than 2 months, the Russians have bombarded this industrial site. Analysts believe this latest attack used phosphorus bombs. But a small fighting force refused to give up. They may have also helped prevent Russia from pushing further north.
Thanks to the Mariupol defenders, the enemy was prevented from redeploying around 20,000 personnel into other regions, and so was unable to rapidly take Zaporizhia.
Civilians also used the site's vast network of tunnels as a refuge, aided by the soldiers. But supplies dwindled, and this cold and fetid bunker was cut off from the world. The situation became desperate. Finally, after 2 months, women and children were allowed out into the light. As they arrived at the evacuation centre, I met Katarina, who'd escaped with her 2 children. The boys, aged 6 and 11, are adapting to being back outside and play much as they did in the dark. Their games involve defeating the Russians. Their father is a fighter and remains at the plant.
Были такие прилеты ракетные, что у нас бункер аж.
Under the bombardment, the bombs were so heavy it felt like the bunker walls were moving, and the rooms themselves became smaller. Sometimes there was an hour break, and we hoped maybe that's it, maybe that's the end of it.
Katarina's home city of Mariupol has been hollowed out by the Russian assault. This once vibrant port is now a shell littered with death and destruction. From the depths of the steel plant, wounded Ukrainian fighters made a plea for safe passage. Many have already died from sepsis, they claim. The Russians say those injured will be treated, and there are reports of a prisoner swap. But it's not clear what will happen to the hundreds of fighters still at Azovstal. Among them is thought to be Katarina's husband.
I really, really, really want to help them, but I just don't know how. I feel really powerless. He is a very strong man, strong in spirit. He has been supporting me all my life.
The Azovstal fighters may have obeyed an order to save lives, but their resolve in the face of insurmountable odds has made them a symbol of Ukrainian resilience.
To the US now, where President Joe Biden is calling on all Americans to reject white supremacy, calling it poison. Mr. Biden has been visiting the city of Buffalo following the deadly mass shooting at a supermarket which killed 10 people. It's the only black-run grocery store in Buffalo. The 18-year-old white male suspect is in custody now, and more details are coming to light about his troubled past. CNN's Brian Todd reports.
The President and First Lady getting a face-to-face look at the grief and shock in Buffalo.
What happened here is simple and straightforward. Terrorism. Terrorism. Domestic terrorism.
Their visit comes as new details emerge about the accused gunman, Social media posts detail Peyton Gendron's interaction with investigators in June of 2021, following an ominous reference to murder-suicide. He made the threat while attending Susquehanna Valley High School in Conklin, New York. We spoke to the district attorney of his home county about that.
On an online class, he said to a teacher that he was contemplating a murder-suicide. The teacher followed up on that, and the suspect indicated that he was just kidding.
In a post, Gendron writes he was sent to the hospital for a mental evaluation, but it only lasted 15 minutes. Quote, because I stuck with the story that I was getting out of class and I just stupidly wrote that down. That is the reason I believe I am still able to purchase guns. It was not a joke. I wrote that down because that's what I was planning to do. Despite this incident, Gendron was allowed to buy firearms under federal law. The DA says it's hard to tell if he fell through the cracks.
The school went through their protocol and called the police, got the state police involved. The New York State Police spoke with him, transported him to a local hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. He was cleared and released.
Gendron put out a 180-page statement detailing a trove of firearms he had, including an illegally modified military-style rifle he allegedly used in Saturday's attack, and a rifle he says his father bought for him. The document says he planned to use the rifle and a shotgun to continue targeting black people elsewhere in Buffalo if he wasn't stopped at the supermarket.
I'm blaming everyone for this happening and continuing to happen to our communities.
Police say the gunman shot 4 people in the parking lot, exchanged gunfire with a security guard, and shot more people in the store before surrendering. Tonight, we're also hearing more from Gendron's former classmates, many calling him a loner.
He gave me a weird feeling in my stomach for some reason. I don't know why. I mean, he was nice, but he was just really shy.
Did you sense that he might have been racist, or did you sense that he was just maybe odd, strange, or creepy?
Odd. Mostly weird sometimes. I mean, I don't like to judge people, but that's the impression I got of him.
Was it his manner of speaking or the things that he said that gave you that impression?
He didn't make eye contact with me when I talked. He, looked around.
The UN Human Rights Office says it's deeply worried about the rapid spread of COVID-19 in North Korea. It believes around 700,000 people are ill and the country's very limited health system is not equipped to cope. The very strict lockdown now in place could have a devastating effect on the human rights in the country. The BBC's Jean McKenzie reports from South Korea.
Dressed as hand sanitisers, North Korean children celebrate their country being COVID-free. Just weeks before Omicron finally breached its defences. The country has done little to prepare for what is now a nightmare scenario. People are unvaccinated, malnourished, and hospitals are not equipped to treat them. Dr. Park works as a neurosurgeon in North Korea.
I've been there over 20 times since 2007. I was working at a major hospital in Pyongyang, and I would have trouble seeing ventilators in the ICUs, and they have trouble getting normal supplies. They reuse things like the scalpel.
Concerned about supplies, Kim Jong-un has been touring pharmacies. There isn't enough medicine, he says. He's ordered the army to distribute stockpiles, but it's unlikely they have what people need.
You need antivirals. They don't have that. I'm certain of it. It's a matter of incredible urgency that we get the pills to them as soon as possible because it has to be taken within 5 days.
Instead, state broadcasts have resorted to the most basic advice. Drink water. Rinse your mouth with salt water. We were sick, this man says, but every night and morning I made us gargle with salt water. North Korea's leader thought he could shut the virus out. For years he's sealed his borders, cutting off food supplies. Lee Sang-yong runs a network of sources inside North Korea. Getting information is difficult, but he's hearing the lockdown is making it even harder for people to get food. In some areas where there are lots of infections, people aren't allowed to leave their homes now, he tells me. In North Korea, if you're stuck at home, there's no way to make money. Suddenly, I'm hearing more cases of people starving to death. Kim Jong-un has some difficult decisions to make. He has to decide how hard to lock down, what's going to be more dangerous for his people and his grip on power. Is it for people to get sick or potentially starve to death? The World Health Organization has said it's ready to send vaccines and medicine, but the North has yet to respond. Soon, it might be too late.
We should not wait until they ask for us to help them. Have packages ready, have cargo ready to go, because each day we wait, people are dying.
How many will pay that price before this secretive state opens its doors to help?
The BBC has been investigating the disappearance of a prominent journalist who kick-started China's Me Too movement. In 2021, Sophia Huang Xueqian and her friend were arrested on the way to the airport for a flight to the UK. Sophia had been awarded a prestigious scholarship fund by the British government to pursue study at the University of Sussex. Now the two are expected to face trial for inciting subversion of state power. The BBC's Jessie Lowe reports.
I am Sophia. I was sexually harassed.
This is journalist Sophia Huang Xueqian.
Then he grabbed me, kissed me from the top of my head to my forehead.
Her sexual assault drove her to kickstart China's Me Too movement. Last June, she was awarded a Achieving Scholarship to pursue gender studies at the University of Sussex in the UK. But in September, Sophia and fellow activist Wang Jianbing were arrested. They are being held on suspicion of inciting subversion of state power, a serious charge that could see them facing years behind bars.
When I found out she was missing and probably arrested, I was super shocked. She just wrote reports on how to help victims in the Me Too movement.
In China, women's rights campaigners are being targeted in a wider state crackdown on freedom of speech. Dozens of online accounts related to gender issues have been blocked. Liu Lipang worked as a censor at Weibo, one of China's largest social media platforms.
Sophia is a very famous reporter. In China, they use propaganda to attack her. It's difficult to differentiate between a state internet commentator and an ordinary user. This is a very scary phenomenon.
Sophia reported on some of China's most high-profile Me Too cases, sparking a dialogue that encouraged more women to speak out. Today, she would be here in Brighton at the University of Sussex. At the time of Sophia's disappearance, the university publicly stated its concerns about her safety. But in an email leaked to the BBC following our request for comment, students and staff were warned not to discuss her situation.
My first reaction to the news was one of outrage. You claim to nurture future activists and leaders in feminism, but then you instructed your students not to discuss this matter. It's just like being in China.
The university told the BBC this was a sensitive matter and media requests should be dealt with by the press office, citing data protection concerns. Sophia and Jianbing have now been detained for over 7 months. Their cases have been handed to prosecutors, and they are expected to face trial soon. The Chinese embassy in the UK told the BBC it is committed to upholding social equity and justice. Chevening and Weibo didn't respond to the BBC's request for a statement.
Queen Elizabeth has made an unexpected visit to Paddington railway station in London to see the new service, the Elizabeth line. It starts running in a week, 3 years after it was planned to have opened. The Crossrail project connects East and West London and extends to Essex and Berkshire. It's one of the biggest public infrastructure projects in the last 50 years. The BBC's Nicholas Witchell reports.
It will carry her name for centuries to come, so there really was only one person to open it. All those mobility issues were put to one side as the Queen came to see the Elizabeth line for herself. $4 billion over budget and more than 3 years late it may be, but today was a day to celebrate its formal completion. She walked slowly and carefully, leaning slightly on her stick, but without any obvious difficulty. At a ticket machine, she was presented with something called an Oyster card and shown where to place it.
Just step back a second, this way.
The Elizabeth line will open to passengers next week, in time for the Platinum Jubilee celebrations. And, judging by today, the person who will be at the centre of those celebrations is getting ready herself. Decisions will still be taken day by day about the Queen's attendance at the different Jubilee events, but there's clearly a determination to be seen as widely as possible.
Well, it's budget day tomorrow. I'm sure you're all bubbling with excitement. This text in: I absolutely support half-price fares becoming permanent. I'm a frequent public transport user. I've definitely seen a big uptake in passengers. This is the way to go with climate change, especially with lots more buses becoming electric. Well, we'll just have to wait to see what the budget brings. That is all we've got time for. The late news team's going to keep you updated throughout the night. And remember, if you missed anything from the show, you can find Checkpoint on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast from. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi a pōpō. Tomorrow from 5 a.m, budget day. First up speaks to Finance Minister Grant Robertson. They'll be trying to get some sneaky previews out of him. And Corin Dan will host a 1-hour budget special from 2 p.m. tomorrow, so do tune in. Kaua e wari te Aotearoa e a mātou kōrero. Got lots of videos from today's program that will be up on our webpage, so do check them out. Kei te hoki mai anō a pōpō whānau pō Mārie. We'll see you tomorrow, budget day. 1 sleep to go. Have a great night.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Kia ora tātou, I'm Evie Ashton. The Secondary Teachers Union believes an attack at a Wellington college shows urgent measures are needed to make schools safer. 2 people have been arrested after an epic 100-kilometre pursuit from Kingston to Winton in the South Island. Lower Hutt List MP Chris Bishop wants a mothballed birthing facility in the city to be reopened when an earthquake-prone building at Hutt Hospital is evacuated. And a Christchurch resident claims the poor water quality at Bromley's damaged wastewater treatment plant is killing the local wildlife. Those are the headlines. Our next news and weather is at 7.
You say the more booze, the more cancer.
For example, in the USA, they estimate that 3.5% of all cancer is due to alcohol.
Lately with me, Karen Hayes, your late night eye on the latest headlines and the people who are making them.
It's an issue over multiple governments over a long time. It will take 3 to 5 years to grow a nurse, 7 to 10 to grow a young doctor. There needs to be that willingness to invest for a time where you may not be in government to see the fruits of that investment.
Up to date if you're up late.